All right. Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us here today in association with Modern Soccer Coaching, Gary Curneen, and the North American Irish Coaches Association. We'd like to welcome former professional player from Ireland, Dublin, played with Notts Forest, Spurs, Charlton, and Sunderland, and is the current Ireland under-18 coach. Andy Reid, welcome.
Thank you. You better call it Nottingham Forest, though. We don't like it if you call it Notts Forest, okay?
No problem. Duly noted. Okay, Gary.
All right, great. Thanks, John. Okay, Andy, great to speak to you again. I've interviewed you about 18 months ago on the Modern Soccer Coach podcast, just before you went into Forest. First question I want to ask you is, how would you describe yourself as a coach these days?
Listen, I would like to think that I'm open-minded. I think that to be a good coach, you have to be able to, you want to have your own philosophy, and in some ways it's a little bit of a contradiction, but you have to be able to absorb things from other people as well. You have to be able to learn. You can't be stubborn in your, I think if you're stubborn in your ways, stubborn in your thoughts, in your beliefs, and too rigid with them, then you won't be able to improve. And for me, I suppose I'd be in the learning phase as a coach. I've had a lot of experience as a player, but I think when you move into the coaching, you have to realise that it's a completely different thing that you're doing. It's a completely new way of looking at it. When you're a player, okay, yeah, you want to take your teammates into consideration in your team, but you're kind of only thinking about your own job and making sure that you get your own job right. When you're a coach, you're thinking about not even just about 11 players, you're thinking about 22 players, 25 players, whatever you might have in your squad. So you have to be very broad-minded. Always prepared to take new ideas on board, and you won't always use them new ideas. Some things that you take on board and you kind of go, well, I can understand where he's coming from, but it's not really for me. And you can kind of park it and maybe go back to it. But there's some things that them little nuggets, them little kind of golden pieces of advice that if you can get them off people, you should kind of jump at the chance of getting them. And I've come across loads of them over the last kind of few years with people that have been talking to it. And Niall will tell you about a conversation that we had when we went down to a coaching conference down in Carlow, and me and him sat in the car with Alan Irvine, who's a very experienced coach. He's at West Ham now, and we had kind of 2 hours to sit in the car with him on the way down to Carlow. And I just picked his brains for the whole 2 hours. I was just asking question after question. I'm sure by the end of it, he thought to himself, I'm delighted to get out of this, But I just seen it as a fantastic opportunity to be able to pick the brains of somebody with so much experience, to be able to kind of try and gain that little bit of knowledge, that little bit of an extra edge that I suppose all us coaches are looking for. We're just looking for that little bit extra.
Whenever you hear some coaches today or some players that played alongside coaches, you hear this a lot. They're like, I never thought he or she was ever going to become a coach. Would people say that about you?
Some people probably would, but it kind of annoys me when people say that. I've got to be honest with you, because it's different. As I said, when you're playing, the majority of players are fully focusing on playing. So they're not really thinking about coaching. It's difficult to kind of say who will and who won't. I do think that's changing. I think players should and probably are looking at the coaching side a little bit earlier. I think I was, probably 32, maybe something like that, when I kind of got my B and my A, 32, 33. But looking back, and I think I probably wish I had done it a little bit earlier. But it's about getting that balance between playing and having the time to focus on playing, and having the time to do the coaching, because you don't just want to get through these coaching courses. You want to really kind of delve into them, because there's so much that you can take from them. I know for the ones that have been run through the FEI, they've been absolutely fantastic, and I've been able to kind of present on A licenses and kind of help people through A licenses and B licenses, which has been brilliant for me to be able to kind of learn about the teaching side of it, and how different people respond to things. So So I think the players now are kind of getting into the coaching a little bit younger, and I would recommend it because if you can get into the coaching side of it and start to think a little bit differently, I think it can help your playing as well.
Brilliant. Keith Mincher, I didn't know you worked with him at Forest. I read this earlier on in the week. I came across him a couple of years ago, and he was amazing. Was this your first exposure to sports psychology in the game at Forest Academy?
Yeah, most definitely was. I think I was probably about 15 first time I met Keith, and would have been a moody little sod to say the least. And Paul Hart brought Keith Mincher in, not just to work with me, although I'm sure he probably needed that much time to maybe sort my head out. But it was my first exposure to sports psychology, and in some ways I think I was probably spoiled a little bit having somebody so good. Keith had a fantastic way of getting things across to you really, really simply. A little bit like Paul Hart on the coaching side of it, Keith on the sports psychology side of it, had a way of getting things across. Little things that will sound really, really simple when somebody explains them to you, but if somebody doesn't explain them to you, then you don't know. And he had little things like that, as in. So he will have helped me with say my mood, as in catching my mood. What mood am I in? And it's up to me then to change it. Now, that doesn't mean that if you're in a bad mood, you always have to change it, because we all get into bad moods sometimes. But if you're aware of what mood you're in and what state that you're in, kind of with your physiology, then you can kind of change that, and you have the power to do that. Whereas if you're not aware of it, then you've got no chance of changing it. And there was little things like that Keith was absolutely brilliant with, and I really enjoyed working with him. And somebody that I learned a hell of a lot from. I learned so much about myself kind of through him. Absolutely fantastic, and a great guy, great company to be around. Really, really lifts your kind of spirits. He had this thing that, you'd say to him, "How are you, Keith? How are you doing today?" And he kind of go, "I'm embarrassingly well." That was his answer to it. And it be kind of came a little bit of a joke with everybody. But when he said it, straight away you kind of went, "Oh yeah, okay, that's great," and that put you in a little bit of a better mood. So great guy, can't speak highly enough of him. And as I said, my first introduction to sports psychology, and I know it's progressed a hell of a lot since then. And I think it's massively, massively important.
When we look at Niall in now and look at psychology and sports education, Niall, do you think that we're moving away from getting that specialist in, and we're moving more towards the coach having to take on more of a psychologist role today?
No, I think it's important that it's nearly a blended process where the coaches themselves in the modern game really have to have an expertise or a knowledge of the expertise in every strand. So the psychology aspect, I think it's actually growing, where you're seeing more of the professional clubs having a full-time person, if not multiple full-time people in the environment. An important aspect for us is that we always say at every level, even at the grassroots level, with the volunteers, with the parents, they must really know themselves first before they start dealing with other people. And it's really important that they're aware of the psychology into the fact that something they say or something they do or the way in which they may even just look at somebody can have a direct impact on them. And I think it's really important then, as you progress throughout the professional pathway, we really would work on, and I think Andy will talk a little bit now about this, but we really work on reflection. It's a huge aspect of it in terms of really figuring out that when they leave the UEFA license courses, they really have a better understanding of themselves and how they will handle themselves in certain situations. And I think that's really important. And I think, Andy, from yourself coming through the pro license now, it's definitely something you would have seen that we would see very valuable for in terms of education.
Yeah, listen, absolutely, and all the lads, we've got a group chat on the with our pro license group at the moment, and that was over the last kind of probably couple of months where we're just finishing off all our bits and pieces. The things that we find that we're revisiting and speaking about and having a dialogue about would be the reflections. Right? What was your thoughts on that? What was your thoughts on this particular bit that we've done? And it was interesting to find out how everybody's thoughts were different on it. Some people had different opinions on different lectures. And that's what makes every coach different. But I think it's very important that the point that Niall makes is that you have to understand yourself and what type of coach you are and what type of person you are before you can start helping other people along that path. We've, if we're talking about the psychology side of it, at Forest, we've got a psychologist, and she was at Burnley for quite a while, and she came to us probably 6 months ago, and she works a lot with the staff, more so than the players. Which when I came in, I found that really interesting. I was thinking to myself, what? Should the psychologist not be working with the players a little bit more? But the more I've got to understand where she's coming from, I think it's very, very important that she works with us. So, and then kind of through us, because she thinks that our message is more powerful to the players, but through us, and we're getting the right messages across, then we can do it. So I think it's what you need for something like this, everybody pulling in the same direction, everybody understanding exactly where they're going to. As a group of people, and people not working on an individual basis, and I think then you will get greater rewards from that.
Which was the best coach or best manager you've worked with who could, I suppose, tap into that psychology side of the game, get the best out of people?
Well, one of the best coaches that I worked with, if we're talking specifically about the football side of the game, so if I'm talking about preparation for a game on a Saturday, so the week building up to the game, to who we're playing against, to having a team set up in a really, really structured, organised way, and having the best opportunity to go and beat the opposition on a Saturday, was Billy Davis. We knew exactly what was expected from us when we went down on the pitch on Saturday. We knew exactly what we were going to face in the opposition. The opposition analysis was top notch. It was really, really good, really, really in depth. And he would plant seeds to us during the week. It wasn't information overload. He'd plant seeds at different points. And then all of a sudden, then on a Friday, we'd go through all the video. We'd go through some video on Thursday, but we'd go through the real crux of the video Friday morning before we get on training. And then things would start to click in your head. Oh, yeah. So that's why we've been working on that. And that's why we've been working on that. Instead of everything being thrown on us at one time and it kind of being a little bit too much, Billy Davis was fantastic at that. And there's psychology in that itself. So he had that, the same as other kind of coaches and managers. There's obviously strengths and weaknesses, but that was a real strength of Billy Davis, and he was one of the best that I've worked with that. Steve McLaren I worked with for a short period of time at Forest. He signed me back for Forest for my second time. Steve McLaren was really, really meticulous with his preparation. His sessions were really, really good, really organised, really structured, and again, everything there was a point to everything. There was nothing that was pointless. Everything meant something. There's a reason why we're doing everything, and I try to do that with my coaching. When I go out, I hate when if I go out there and I think to myself, well, I'm just doing this for the sake of it. I really try to avoid that. Everything has to be for a specific reason. And gearing towards something. And I think that gives you the opportunity to be more inventive as well. If you're doing that and there's a reason why you're doing it, then you have to be more inventive. You have to try things. You have to be a little bit further out there, and I think that helps you improve as a coach as well.
Most of us, if not all of us on here, has watched the Sunderland documentary on Netflix. Common theme that you hear about the players is the pressure it is for a club, playing for a club like Sunderland, and these players are now in League Two. You were there 3 odd years, Premier League, did really well. What was the secrets to you dealing with that pressure at that club?
Listen, I think I'd been at big clubs before. Sunderland's a massive club, but obviously, listen, Forest's a big club. I'd been at Tottenham as well, and I'd represented my country. I played in front of a hell of a lot of people, playing international World Cup qualifiers and stuff. So I never really felt the pressure as such, because I think I'd kind of gradually built up to that level, and I felt kind of really comfortable with it. At the same time, I've seen it, and not just at Sunderland, but seen it at Forest quite a bit. Players kind of come and they get overawed by the size of the club. They get overawed by the pressure of, well, you have to go and do well. You have to go out and perform. It's not enough to kind of get beaten. It's not enough to kind of just get a draw, you know, and you have to really kind of go for it. And some players just can't handle that pressure at the start, but I do feel that you can work with them to try and help them. I'd like to think that now I'd be in a better position then to be able to help people. At the time, I was just a player, and I kind of didn't really understand other people why they couldn't deal with it. I think as a coach now, and having seen it and experienced it as a player, I think I'd be able to help people with that and being able to deal with them pressures. You know, you have to really focus on your own kind of situation. And what you say to players is you don't want players giving away the ball. You don't want players making mistakes. But one thing you're guaranteed to happen in a game of football is that a player is going to give away the ball at some point. A player is going to make a mistake. Okay, so if you let that affect your next action, then that's when you start having problems then, because the next one leads on to the next one, Every single action that you do, I think, has to be in its own entity, so to speak. I don't know if that kind of makes sense where I say that, but you can't be thinking about the time before, you know, I gave away the ball. You have to kind of just take every single instance to its own merit and try and produce something, you know. And I think that's where confidence comes from as well. If it becomes second nature to you then, and you're not thinking about it too much, you're not overthinking football too much, that's where, as a natural footballer, you want to try and get the best out of yourself. When you overthink it, everybody knows it's just in anything. If you overthink something time and time again, then you're going to consistently make mistakes. It has to be. Football is such a, you know, it's such a natural game. You know, there's real flow to it that you know, you want to try and get them times as much as possible, that natural side to it.
Niall, hell of a lot of pressure on coaches now as well, even not just at the Sunderland professional level, but even youth coaches, high school coaches, they're all getting pressure, social media, results, parents. What are you doing specifically in the education part of it that's kind of helping them prepare for that there?
Yeah, it's very difficult, because obviously you nearly have the fear of success when you look at Andy at the moment in time. He has young kids that are playing the game, and all Andy wants them to do, I can imagine, is fall in love with the game the way he did. It's very difficult now, though, because there's a lot of other people aren't like that. A lot of people in the game have a son or a daughter that shows an element of talent, and automatically there's pressure because there's external factors. There's people turning around and telling them they have a chance, they could make it. And all of a sudden, you're starting to think 10 years down the line, could there be a Premier League star? The big one for us, and what we always say to our coaches, is you got to judge yourself in the environment that you're in. And I think the biggest problem is sometimes our coaches will look at the wrong reference. So they might look at the Premier League, or they look at the Jurgen Klopps, or they look at the coaches that are extremely animated on the sideline. But the reality is they're animated because at the moment in time, the lifespan of a manager is just over a year. For new up-and-coming managers, if you don't get 70 games in your first managerial position, there's a 96% chance you won't get a second managerial position. So the pressure that they're under is phenomenal. And because of that, they're animated. You can imagine if you or I were going to work every Monday morning and we knew that we could lose our job in 12 months' time, we'd certainly be animated to make sure the people around us did the best they could. So for us, we always say that to them, that you can always look at the professional side of the house, the top end of the game as best practice, but you got to strip it back to your own reference. And if you're a U coach and you're working with U14s, U15s, you've got one priority, and that's to make sure that they fall in love with the game of football. And I always say to clubs, you should judge a coach 10 years down the line. So the U14 coach this year, in 2030, how many of those players are still playing football? And if it's only in the amateur game, it's playing with their own club. If he can get 60-70% of those players to stay within the game, that's a top-class coach. But sometimes people get really stuck into the short-term success of picking up an underage trophy or winning an underage league. Like, the reality of it is there's more important things in the long term. And through that short-term success, if a coach is working with a U14 or 15 and they're animated and they end up winning a game because they're nearly like a PlayStation coach, it's the players will lose out in the end, because that's why we have such a drop-off from U15 to U19, from people taking other avenues or going other routes, because they're probably at a point where they're saying they're sick of being told what to do. They're not given the opportunity to really explore themselves as a player, to go out and enjoy the game, challenge, make mistakes. So we really try and encourage our coaches within our platforms to do all of the hard work during the week in training. And when it comes to the game, you're nearly taking a step back. You're zooming out. You're not getting stuck in the animation or the emotion of it. And that's what happens to us all. Every one of us have been there, where we're there where a close person or a family friend or somebody's playing the game and you let yourself go because you get sucked into the emotion. So we really try and teach them to take that step back, think about what you worked on during the week, positive reinforcement. Of course, you can be vocal on the sideline, but positive, remind them of the things that you've practiced, encourage them to make mistakes, and really just try and deal with the fact that you as the coach set the tone. If you get animated, there'll be a ripple effect. It's like dropping a pebble into the ocean. You'll see parents will start reacting, players will start reacting. While if you keep calm and relaxed and you react in that way to any decision that's controversial, the ripple effect will everybody else will be calm and relaxed. So it's really important to try and not get stuck in the emotion. But it's very difficult because social media, parent pressure, you're on show now, a volunteer parent coach in the grassroots game, even in the professional game, young coaches, they're all thinking about ambitions. They all go into the game now and they're all thinking about the next step. They want to get on. We see it in the coaching pathway. Coaches that come in and do a B license, they get their B license and they're like, when am I eligible to go and do an A license? And we always say it's take your time, go and practice your trade, go and get as much experience as you can. And it's great to have people like Andy talking about that. Like Andy's in the educational system now 6 or 7 years, and he's in it in the sense that he's done his B, took a bit of time, did his A, took a bit of time, and he's now completing his pro. And even at that, he's coming back to present on the B and the A to gain that experience of a different side of the house in terms of being a presenter and teaching. So it's really important that for us, the pressures of the game, you have to be able to realise it is a game. And if ever there was a good moment in time to realise that, it's now with everything that's going on in terms of the coronavirus. And we start to realise there's actually much bigger things in life to deal with.
Can I just come in on that there, Niall, and just to take on the point of the lifespan of coaches and managers. And the lifespan of coaches and managers, in my opinion, is starting to have a real effect on youth development, because like what Niall said, people are in the job for a very short period of time, which for for some first team managers, some senior team managers, because they don't feel that they've got that time and that length of time in the job, they maybe don't feel like they want to take that chance on a younger player and develop him over a year or an 18-month period, because they probably don't feel they're going to be in the job in 18 months. And I've, working in youth development, I've kind of seen it in clubs that I've gone around and clubs that I've looked, specifically when I was working with the under 18s, and when I have been and when I've gone into clubs and seen it and spoke to players, and you're kind of saying to them, why are you not getting that opportunity? And I think that it's a problem, and it's a problem that comes from the top, and then it starts to filter its way all the way down then into the, because that's where the pathways are kind of being blocked. If I think if a first team manager had a little bit longer to work with players, a longer lifespan, then he would be more encouraged to kind of try and bring players through, because he'd feel that he has more time to work with them. So it just goes to show you where the whole cycle is, it's and where everything is linked in. It's not about youth development, and it's not about first team football, and it's not about under 23s football or whatever it may be. The whole thing is so linked in together, and I think that you make for a better football club. I think you make for a better international setup, kind of all the way through, if you can get everybody pulling in the right direction. And that's what everybody is kind of striving for. And I think, we're very, very lucky with the FAI, the way the managerial structure has been, and for us to for us as kind of younger kind of coaches coming in, to be able to have them experience coaches like Mick McCarthy and like Stephen Kenny, and to be able to bounce things off over the last kind of 6-8 months, I think it has made for our players to be able to kind of jump up the levels kind of easier, because we've had that good relationship with them, So Tom Mohan has been able to kind of pick up the phone to Stephen and say, you need to have a look at Jason Knight, you need to have a look at Adam Eda, get him in there. And Stephen's like, yeah, I'll get them in, I'll have a little look at them. The same with Mick to Stephen, and I know it's changed now, obviously, but And I can do the same with Tom Moen, and it means that there's better pathways for these players, and they're able to progress quicker, and they're able to kind of play at a higher level of football if you've got a good structure in place and people feel a little bit more secure.
Brilliant. Last one for me, and then we'll bring in then with some questions. But whenever, Andy, I heard or I read that you're an internal conflict between this development and winning, this unique sweet spot of a U23, U18 coach just before they break in to the professional level. How do you navigate around that development, but then you're making sure they're competitive enough to drive through to the first team?
Well, I think what you always need to understand, and it's difficult because you have that competitiveness inside you. It's under 18 level and under 23 level. The main aim is to get players into the first team. That's your main aim. So the development is the most important thing. Now, part of their development, right, is to try and teach them to win. Because I was in an interview actually with Oita Karanka when he was not for his first team manager, and I'd done a presentation for him, and one of the parts of the presentation was, you know, how I see development as being important, but I see winning as being important as well, because when you get into the first team, winning becomes very, very important. And he said to me, he said winning's not important. He said winning's everything. Now, you see, he's looking at it from a first team level, that winning is absolutely everything first team level, because that's what he needs to do. And then when you've kind of filtered down, you have to get the mix between the development and the winning. But part of the development is to try and teach them a winning mentality, because that's ultimately what they have to have. Now, that doesn't mean that they have to have it by under 18 level or they have to have it by under 23 level. But the sooner you can try and instill that in them as part of their development, then I think the better they'll be, a better chance they have of getting into the first team earlier. I think the average age is going up now. It's creeping up and up when players are getting into first teams. You know, I think I made my debut, I think I was 18, not long turned 18. I would say players now are getting into first teams probably 20, 21 now. On average, I'd be interested to see the stats on that. But that's the way it's going. So you have to try and give them these little tools as early as possible. Not try and give them to them. You can't give players things. You have to just help them along and try and kind of infuse things in them as gradual development happens. And because the ultimate aim is getting in that first team. And when you get in a little bit like coaching, when you get or managing, when you get that opportunity, you have to be ready. And it's the same with players when they get, because they might only get one opportunity. You know, they might only get one opportunity to impress the first team manager in the first team setting. You put him out on the pitch in front of 25,000 people. He has to be ready to take the opportunity, because he might not get another opportunity. Unfortunately, that's the nature of football.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Niall. We'll bring in Enda here, and we'll take some questions from the crowd. Enda.
Thanks, Gary.
No problems.
Yeah, Gary, thank you. Andy. Andy, every generation of football players is different, right? Because of the culture, the technology they grow up with, the changes and advances. With that being said, how do you think this generation of young footballers is different from the past? And what different approaches have you brought into your sessions and coaching philosophy to address that, you know, and the difference in the players now compared to the past?
I don't think players are as rough and ready as they were 20 years ago. But then, if you're talking about, you know, when I was in the academy, players 20 years before me, they would have said the same thing. You know, that were not as kind of, you know, not as tough, not as probably at times not as mentally strong, maybe not as mentally strong, but you need to work with them a little bit more on the mental side of the game. And I think that's one thing that I try and do. Try and help players on the mental side of the game, because I think if your mentality is right and you've got a real good mentality towards football, and you can try and develop a strong mentality, then I think you've got a better chance of being a successful footballer. Because we spoke about earlier on, you make mistakes in football. You go through bad patches in football. You go through bad patches out of football. So there might be things going on behind the scenes of a young player that I might not know about. And I have to take that into account, that there might be something happening. So if I can help him to be more mentally prepared, if I can understand, I'm talking about young players now, if I can understand the young player a little bit more and when he might be feeling a little bit down, when he might be feeling a little bit low, when I need to step in to try and help him, then I think that makes me a better coach. So these are things that I've developed over the last few years, and I'm continually trying to develop them and trying to get better at them. Understanding of young players can be quite a complex thing.
Good. So obviously, you left Ireland to go to the UK at a young age. Do you feel players could stay home longer now before going to England or Europe? And if they do stay home, obviously, is that good for their development to stay home?
I think if they're in the right environments, then I think they can stay at home and they can still be successful. There's things in place now that weren't in place 20 years ago when I was a kid. I mean, there's a fantastic transition year course for the kids in transition year in secondary school. There's a fantastic course run in conjunction with the FAI and Fingal County Council that they can go, and as their transition year, they can be pretty much professional footballers. They run off a fantastic football program for the year, and it gives them an opportunity to experience what it's like to be a professional footballer. Now, I never had anything like that. It was a case for me where I just went over to England when I was 14, 15, and it was kind of fend for yourself, and I was looked after fantastically well by so many people in Nottingham, but I didn't have any experience of what it was going to be like. I think if you to look at the whole Brexit situation, it could be a fantastic opportunity for investment to go into academies of League of Ireland clubs. Instead of looking at it as all players can't move over to England now anymore, look at it as in, right, well, that means that we have to make sure that the infrastructure in our football clubs at the academy level is really, really top notch, and it really needs to improve. So if they're not going away to England to get this professional football over in England, it needs to be spot on over there, because there's fantastic coaches in Ireland. There really is fantastic coaches in Ireland of young players, and if we can give them better tools, i.e. better facilities, better equipment, pitches, all the things like that, if we can make them better, then there's no reason why players that were moving over to England and being successful, why they can't stay in Ireland and be successful. I firmly believe that.
Brilliant. What advice would you give to any young players that do decide to go, and just make the jump? Obviously, some don't want to stay home. Some will take the chance. They'll get the itch if Man United want to sign them at 15, 16. Is there any advice you'd give to parents and the players, like what's ahead?
Yeah, listen, the main advice that I would give to them would be very, very careful with the club that you choose. Every player will be suited to a different club. Just because Man United come calling or Liverpool come calling or whoever it may be, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be the right club for you. Now, it might be, don't get me wrong, and I've got nothing against the big clubs kind of signing players and they develop players really young. I mean, the Man City under-18 coach Gareth Taylor, I played with him. He's a fantastic coach. Players go over there and they really, really get looked after. I know a lot of players have kind of come through at Man United. You look at Robbie Brady, Paul McShane, John O'Shea, players like that. So, and I know Nick Marshall in Liverpool's academy, and I know a fantastic bloke and very, very knowledgeable about developing young players. So I'm not saying that's not the right club for people to go to, but I would say just be very, very careful with the club that you choose, and make sure that the club that you choose is suited to you and it's suited to your trajectory and to where you want to go and to your style of football, and make sure that there's a pathway there for you, because we spoke about earlier, the ultimate aim is to get into the first team. It's not to play 18s football for your whole career or 23s football for 5 years or 6 years. The main aim is to get into that first team. So to do that, there has to be a pathway there for you. So I would think very, very carefully about that.
Good. And Niall can jump in on this one question. When speaking about reflection, how thin is the line between a healthy reflection and doubting yourself? And how often on the coaching education courses do you encounter coaches doubting their beliefs or their principles after a course?
Yeah, it's one of those ones that we always advise coaches that they need to get comfortable with what reflection is to them, and it needs to become a consistent process. I think what happens in the latter situation is when coaches don't do reflection regularly, and then they put themselves out of their comfort zone, for example, in a coaching course, and they do a coaching practice. It's only human nature. There was an interview this week with John O'Shea, and he spoke about the butterflies in his stomach going out doing his first coaching practice on the B license a number of years ago. And I remember working with John throughout that. The reality is, for reflection, it should be something that you do all of the time. You should pre-reflect. Andy talked about it, and when he spoke about coaches that have had a positive influence, they're the coaches that plan everything in detail. They look at it. I look at Andy in that way, and it's great. I've had the pleasure of working with Andy over the last number of years, and Andy puts so much detail into what's going to happen on the pitch. And then afterwards, because of all of that planning, the reflection is quite short, because it's literally a critique. What went well? What didn't go well? What can I do better next time? If I got the chance to do it again, what would I change? And then you have to really learn how to park it. And that's something that's difficult. And it's something we try and work with our coaches at every level. And it's a question I've asked every coach I've ever dealt with. And I'm going to ask Andy now, put him on the spot. As you've made that transition to coaching, how do you take that time away from football, Andy? How do you leave that bad result or leave that bad training session? What are the things that you do to deal with that?
What I really do to deal with is focus on the next one. I'm not focus on the next one, focus on how I can make sure that the next one is right. I think it's human nature that if you have a good result, that you don't kind of look back on it as much, because things kind of, maybe not papered over is the wrong thing, but when you lose, because it hurts so much, you really, really kind of delve into it. So my main focus from a bad training session or a bad game or something that hasn't gone quite my way is to make sure that it doesn't happen the next time. So you've got to learn from them mistakes. Why did it go wrong? So tell me, why did it? And it's not to beat yourself up about it, because we make mistakes. We all make mistakes. It's going to happen. There's going to be times when you come up against somebody. We probably was in my second or my third game when I went in with Nottingham Forest. We played against Bournemouth's under-23s. Now, we had planned all week to play against them playing a 4-3-3. That when the game started, they were playing a 3-5-2. Now, we didn't spot it for 15 minutes and we were 2-0 down. And after the game, you're there and you're thinking, we didn't spot it for 15 minutes. And you're beating yourself up. And that's what you do. But then, right, what I said, okay, well, listen, we're going to make sure this doesn't happen again. So me and Chris Cohen then, we sat down, right, how do we make sure that this doesn't happen again? Okay, after 2 minutes of every single game, I have to speak to the analyst who records the games from above and say, can you see any changes that I might be missing here? So we'll double check it. So I'm having a look at the formation. Okay, yeah, I see what we think. And he's seen it from above. This is what he thinks as well. And that's just one way of I suppose, it's problem solving. And I suppose, it's reflection, isn't it? That is part of reflection. But it's doing it in the right way. And like what Niall says, it's not about beating yourself up. It's about just making sure that it doesn't happen again the next time. And we don't want to continually make the same mistakes. And that's one mistake that from that game on, we never made that mistake again. We always knew exactly what we were up against. Exactly what formation we were playing against. Other things on reflection, things that I've done. I've wore the earpods in training when I'm taking a session, and record everything, and then listen back to it afterwards, and kind of be like, well, okay, how did that go? Did I get across what I needed to get across? Other ways, and I know we've done it on some of on the pro license where the lads have wore GoPros, haven't they, Niall?
Yeah.
As well, it's another way of reflection, and it's another way of you figuring out what you're good at. Okay, I'm really, really strong in this. I'm going to keep going with this, or I could probably improve a little bit on this. And a word that things that I like to use as a coach when I'm coaching players is, it's not about, okay, what can you get better? It's what I like. Improvement goals. What are my improvement goals? You know, it's not. You weren't very good at this, or you weren't very good at that. It's like, right, what are our improvement goals? Where can we go? How can we try and improve this?
Brilliant. Andy, knowing what you know now, if you were to give advice to a young Andy Reid, starting out, 15 years old, 16 years old, what would you tell him and why?
I think I've spoken about this quite a bit, and one thing that I would say on the personable side of a thing, so if we're talking about, you know, as a coach now, it's not just about developing good players. I really want to try and develop good people as well. I think it's very, very important, and some of the best advice I was given when I was younger is try and stay humble. You know, be appreciative of everything that you're doing. Of the life that you can be living. And when I say that, I mean playing football every single day. You know, it was a pleasure, you know, to go and do it. So be appreciative of that and stay humble. And one thing that we do when we go away with the under 18s, or when I go away with Forest 23s anywhere, I want people to talk about us in a positive way. So if we're in a hotel and we're having a pre-match meal, or we're staying somewhere and somebody serves you some food or hands you a plate or gives you this, say please, say thank you, you know, be really kind of appreciative for what people do to you. And I think it's very, very important for, you know, it's a really important part for me. As I said, it's not just good footballers that we look to kind of produce. So, you know, I like to see that that real kind of manners and humility about players.
Great. Andy, do you have a mentor or mentors that you look up to and bounce things off? Is that something you currently have, or is it multiple mentors, or is it just one person you kind of go through?
Yeah, well, listen, the people that I've kind of spoke to, Paul Hart and Ian McCallum, coaches that I've worked with before, would be things that I'll be able to bounce things off. Chris Evans, who's a former technical director of Derby County, and he was Wolves Academy manager for a while. Somebody that I've been able to bounce things off as well. With, you know, these have been a great sounding board for me to be able to. And I suppose one of the biggest ones since I kind of started working with him a few years ago was our new under-21s manager, Jim Crawford. You know, Jim is fantastic. He really, really is. He's a great guy. He's a fantastic coach, and he's somebody that. He's got such a calm way about him. You know, he's worked in the coach education department over the past few years as well, and he's got a real calmness about him. And sometimes if you get a little bit flustered, Jim is a great person to kind of ring up, and you know, he's got a real calm and reassuring way about him. So I suppose them people would be things that I'll be able to kind of bounce things off. Since I've gone in at Forest, Gary Brazil, who's the Forest Academy manager, has been absolutely fantastic with me. You know, he's been really great, and again, a real sounding board. You know, you go and bounce things off him, and you know, and he'll give you a real kind of level-headed kind of answer back about, you know, where he thinks you should go, and then you can kind of start to form your own opinions and start to make your own decisions then.
Great. You played under multiple managers. What manager did you enjoy the most playing under, and why?
Different managers at different times. Paul Hart, working with in the academy, and then in the early days in the first team of Forest, was fantastic. I mentioned earlier briefly that Paul had a very, very had a way of getting things across to you very, very simply, so you understood exactly what he was talking about and what he wanted you to do. And I think that's a real art in coaching. I think at times coaches, and I suppose I've done it myself, we kind of overcomplicate things and kind of struggle to get across in the right way. So I think if you can get it across in a real simplistic way, especially to young players, then I think it's very important. So Paul would have been one. I mentioned Billy Davis earlier on. Billy is a fantastic coach, really, really fantastic coach. Alan Pardew as well. When I was at Charlton, I got on really well with Alan Pardew, and I liked the way about him. He kind of treated me really, really well. He seemed to know how to get the best out of me, and I'd like to think I produced some really good football under him. So I think a good coach is the one who gets the best out of the players, wherever the situation may be. And I know that might sound obvious, but people don't always look at it like that way, because they try and complicate things too much.
Yeah, for sure. I could bring back maybe Niall as well for this one. You both can kind of answer it. It's a common theme on the question trend. How do you and the FAI in general prepare players to make it, as a player? And do you help them develop? Is there a plan in place to develop them, or give them a plan B if they don't make it as a player? Because obviously, on here we have a lot of people that came to America to play in college soccer and things like that. So I think that's where they're going with it. Like, if you don't make it as a pro, is there a plan B in place to get your education and kind of move forward that way if you don't make it as a professional?
Yeah, the FAI has really come on leaps and bounds. Like, there's multiple programs that we probably wouldn't globally be known, but a program that I previously worked in is a fully funded program by the ETB, and that would have longevity into the sense it would go all the way back. Bobby Smith was one of the first people involved in the competition they play is actually named after him. Harry McHugh would be a significant person, Mick Conroy and Stuart Ashton and Cork. So really what that is it's a 12-month program that players can come in, train in a full-time environment, and what they get from it is they get academic qualifications, which is the equivalent to 400 points in a leaving cert. They also get paid because it's funded through the ETB program, so they get a payment every week. So they're actually learning how to manage themselves in terms of budgeting money, dealing with travel and travel expenses, and so on and so forth. So it's a real invaluable course in terms of the life skills that they get. Within the international setup, I think Niall Harrison, and most people on this would know Niall, has been significantly involved in player development and the emerging talent program. And over the last number of years, the high performance director, Reid Doctor, has had significant influence in terms of where Irish football looks like now in terms of the implementation of the 13s, 15s, 17s, 19s. And he's had a huge influence in the education of those players, where even in the League of Ireland now, we have a program in which we educate the young players that are playing at 15s and 17s, where we give them their coaching qualifications for free. So we're starting to prepare them. So at U19 level, they leave with a national D license. So in that fear that if they do step out of that professional environment, that they have something that they can keep themselves within the game. Obviously, we've got a phenomenal department in the organisation with Mark Scanlon in terms of the schools and colleges, and that's just got phenomenal numbers. And we've got so many players that are involved. Obviously, there's things to be done, and it's very important that we make sure that players, as they're coming through working in the underage structures, that they're aware that they have an importance to have a dual career, that football might be priority number one, but they have to prepare themselves that an injury, a decision, a life decision, a personal choice, travel, whatever it is, not been selected, not making it, all of those things can directly impact them making it as a player. And it's such a small percentage that do make it as a player that we really have a huge responsibility to prepare them. And I think we're doing a good job. We can obviously do better because we always want to make sure that we can improve. But I think, Andy, even with your group, your U18s, obviously when they're in with you, they'd still be doing academic modules and teaching modules and other programs, and you'd have one-to-ones with them about what they can do in their next steps, sort of having a 5-year plan with them.
Yeah, most definitely, and I think it's very, very important that we try and do that as much as we can when we're away. We make sure that the education side of it is right. One thing that I try and do when I'm away with the international setup, and it may be seen as a little thing, but I see it as very important. We would get the lads to present different things to us when we're away. So we get them up in front of the whole group, and maybe in groups of 1 or 2, and get them to help them with the presentation skills. And I think it's very, very important. Because there's different, they could end up going down a different road. But one thing that you most of the time that you need in life, you're going to need to be able to stand up in front of people and be able to communicate. So I see that as a very, very important tool. So we try and do that as much as we can. It's difficult in the international setup because you don't get that much time with them. You're only working in the international break. So I think there's an onus then to work with the clubs. And I see it now with Forest now. I'm working with Forest now, and I see the amount of time that goes into the education. And I think it's massively important because, you know, if you see the numbers of players that make it, everybody has great aspirations. Everybody really wants it, but not everybody does make it. And I think, you know, the numbers out there, you know, show the percentages of that. So we have to prepare them for a life outside of football just in case, and anything that we can do to help them along with that, then we do it. You know, there's education officers in place, there's player liaisons in place who can help them. The PFA, FEI over in Ireland and the PFA over in England, they contribute money towards courses that they might want to do moving forward. And I think education people are, you know, over the last kind of 15, 20 years are starting to realise how important it is because of the amount of numbers of young players that unfortunately, through the nature of football, they don't go on to make it.
Yeah, brilliant. Last one, Andy, and then we'll turn it over to Niall here. What are some of the challenges you faced going from playing to coaching? And then, you know, in your mind, what makes a good coach?
Well, okay. Well, so some of the problems that I faced was nothing can ever replace playing. Playing, it gives you such a buzz being out there. You're fit, you're healthy all the time. You're getting that buzz from being out there, and you're actually the one doing it. You've got your own destiny in your own hands, so to speak, which is a nice thing to do. And you know, when that finishes and it was taken away from me through injury, I found it difficult to kind of take, and I kind of thought to myself, you know, well, what is going to replace this? And it took a little bit of time for me to kind of gradually move from the playing phase into the coaching phase. Probably took maybe a year to 18 months for me to kind of start to really get my buzz for the from the coaching and understand how I can get my buzz from it. What is the that kind of fix that you need to get from coaching, and that is setting your teams up in the right way. You know, working on something specific with a player and then it coming off in a game. You know, all them things are what you're doing. What's your program over a long period of time and how can you implement it? And when you set out your goals at the start of whatever it is your target is, have you achieved them? So all these things are what you kind of get it from, and that's part of it. It can be a difficult process to go from playing into coaching. And you have to kind of find your way in coaching, as in find what type of coach are you? You know, what type of am I a loud coach? Am I a quiet coach? Do I get my point across really clearly, or do I kind of skirt around it a little bit? Whatever it may be, and there's different types of coaches. The same way there's different types of personalities, but you have to find your own way in that. And when you do find your own way in that, that's when coaching really becomes enjoyable. I've also found that the courses have really helped. The A license and the B license and the A license were massively advantageous for me for getting that confidence to be able to go out on the pitch and hold a session. You know, feel comfortable in a session and being able to kind of being able to set it up in the right way, make sure the preparation is right, make sure the organization is correct. So all them kind of things have been the B and the A help with that. And then when I move on to the pro license, which I'm kind of just coming towards the end of that journey now, it really takes it on to the next level. It's really elite stuff. From the assignments that we had to do, I mean, just to talk about one of the assignments briefly, I had we were given all a team that were part of the European qualifying campaign, and I was given Wales, and I had to track Wales throughout the whole qualifying campaign. I had to do match reports, I had to do player analysis, I had to do team analysis, I had to video clip, I had to edit the whole thing, I had to, and then I had to design a program of how, if I'm Ireland, how do I go and play against Wales and be really successful? What's the strength? What's the weaknesses? A really detailed program. And you're talking, this is really elite stuff. You know, this is stuff that, you know, I'd feel comfortable handing this presentation to Stephen Kenny for Ireland to go and play against Wales. That's how elite it is, and that's what it takes to kind of achieve that. And that was all driven from without kind of going, but Niall's kind of driven all that, and then all the tutors. Then, you know, you've got Tom Moan, Jim Crawford, Craig Sexton. All these people have really driven us kind of towards that, and And I remember Colin O'Brien speaking at the start of it and talking about the body of work that you would have at the end of the pro license. And it was only over the last probably 2 or 3 months when I'm starting to assemble everything and put it all together and, get it all in folders and start to organize it all, that I'm looking at and going, this is a serious piece of work that we've got here, and something that nobody can kind of ever take away from you. And that's a testament to how well the course was run, how it was organized, and the assignments that we were given, the lectures that were brought in.
All right, fantastic, Andy. Once again, Andy, I really appreciate your time. I think everyone's, has really enjoyed the chat and everything. So, good luck with everything as well, with your coaching career and your pro license. And, we'll be following you. So thanks for that. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it. And thanks for having me on. I'm still relatively young in my kind of coaching career, but to be able to share my experiences within the game, it's a fantastic thing for me to be able to do. So, hopefully if somebody, if a few people have taken some little bits and pieces from that, then that makes me happy, because, I think coaching's about that. It's about helping other people as well. I don't like the snobbery that comes with it sometimes. I always feel that I'll try and help people coming through, and I love it when people help me as well. So to be able to help, I'm only too pleased.
Brilliant. I'm going to turn it over to Niall O'Regan now. He's going to talk about the coaching education pathway with the Football Association of Ireland.
Yeah, look, again, thanks, and it's great to get these platforms. It's one of those things. It's an exciting time in coach education for the FAI. We've got a number of exciting changes. In September, we're going to be launching our updated pathway. So there's lots of exciting things. We're going to be introducing some new courses. And one of the key things for us to get across on this platform is the natural links that we're going to create between ourselves and the North American Coaches Association. And we will be bringing Andy. I'm delighted to say Andy's going to come with us this January to the coaching convention. And we're going to look to deliver practical workshops and build on the Irish day that we've done in the past. In terms of coach education, for those people that are interested in further information, just drop me an email on niall.o'regan@fai.ie and I'll be able to answer any questions or queries that you have. Outside that, thanks very much, Enda. I'll just call you back in, or Gary, whoever it is, wants to close it out.
Yeah, thank you very much, Niall. Andy, good luck with everything. Cheers, everyone. Thank you very much.
Cheers, guys. Thanks very much for having us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Andy.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Gary. Cheers.
Thanks, Niall. Thank you, everybody, for listening in. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to have some more. We have Jim McGuinness coming in. Damien Duff will also join us, and a couple of others that we have lined up, and then all the MLS Irish coaches that we have. So stay in touch. Emails will be going out, information on social media, and we look forward to presenting again. Take care, everybody.